Welcome to another episode of Absolutely Fabulous. It's episode 55. Today we're talking about speed limit reduction proposed for 80 kilometres on unmarked roads.
And we're also talking about, and you had me completely tricked with this one in the group chat, Chacha, a bull bar ban, because you wrote a bull bat ban. And I'm like, is that what they call a drafting stick in New South Wales? You had me tricked, but I figured it out eventually. It was a bull bar ban.
Let's say that's probably half autocorrect and half probably my dyslexia. Harvest complaints.
And there was something else that I forget about because
Farmers
I don't,
band together as a transmission
yeah.
company demands access to farming properties.
Do you know what? Because I've even done
Ooh,
research. Look, I've got notes and everything
I love this.
because been on the road all day. We've got Starlink in the car now. So I was being chauffeured. So I'm like, oh, I'll do a bit of research while I'm driving along. So yeah, I've actually got notes and stuff about tonight's topics. So instead of just random spouting off anything that comes into my brain, I've got actual facts and stuff we can talk about. Hi, welcome to Absolutely Fabulous. My name is Gillian Fennell, also known as Station Mum 101. I love everything about agriculture, especially the people and especially communicating about what makes Australian ag so special.
And I'm Katja Williams, a beef, cattle, and cropping farmer, and I love all things ag, and I'm also known as the ultimate farm wife. Together, we are absolutely fabulous, and we are talking all things agriculture beyond the headlines.
And we can't wait to give our opinion to you, and we hope you enjoy it.
So let's get into today's episode. Now, you're the second person who I've heard has Starlink in the car. Where does the actual modem sit?
Right in the center of the dash, because it has to be able to see the sky, and so it has to be relatively flat. So you can't like stick it on the back window or anything, because it has to like look up. If you've got a like a sunroof or a moonroof, they like to call them in Australia. If you've got one of those, just stick it up on there. I wouldn't put mine on the outside of my car because I've seen a few destroyed Starlinks on the side of the road on the highway so far. So I don't care how good they say your magnet mount is. I don't think it's quite going to cut the mustard. So we put it on the dash. We've got a little holder off Temu. It just suction cups onto the windscreen. It looks like a big plastic folder, essentially, just sitting on the middle of the dash. So yeah.
There you go.
And then it plugs into the cigarette plug in the back of the center console.
Cool. Very cool. Very techno.
Because ours isn't mounted permanently in my car because it's supposed to it lives mainly in the work car at the station. When we're traveling, like it does make sense to have it because I've been doing a lot of work in the car today, actually.
Well, tell us about your travel over the last week.
I haven't been. Where did I go last week? I didn't go anywhere last week. I stayed at home and mucked around dyeing my hair back to brown. There was another big story that if we put the pre-chat in, Katja can cut it and put it in and you can hear all about it. Otherwise, it'll just be a mystery to everybody.
It's lucky for you all and Gillian that I am fairly clever and I have inserted that piece of pre-chat right here for you all to listen to. Enjoy!
Last week, I decided because I dye my hair when I go away, like just with a semi. And I thought, you know what? I would really like to see how grey I actually am. So I'll use my hair dye stripper that I have in the cupboard and I will strip my hair and see how grey I am underneath. Because I was like having pretty big grey roots. Except it was a different brand to the one I usually use. And when I rinsed it out, I was blonde-ish. I was actually bright orange. So
Oh
I
no!
have been, because I've got like a big week of AGMs and everything this week, I've been dyeing my hair every 2 or 3 days, like dyeing it blue and grey, trying to get the cool tones back in. So
Yeah.
then when I put brown over the top, it doesn't go like look like bright orange sick. So yeah, I've gone back to a very light brown. When I'm out in the sun, it still looks slightly orange, but I'll survive. I didn't realize that because I did it like overnight. And then when I went to wake Eleanor up in the morning, she was like laying in her bed, and I went to her room to like open up the door, and she just went,
She's awake straight away.
and I'm just like, what are you looking at? She goes, your hair, it's orange.
Nothing
Yeah.
like the brutal honesty of a child.
Why have you done that? It's like, oh, I did it on purpose. It was an accident. But yeah, all right.
Very
Okay.
fun.
I've actually look, okay, we'll make a start and then I'll do some stuff so we can right,
Okay.
off you.
Welcome to another episode of Absolutely Fabulous. It's episode 55. Today we're talking about speed limit reduction proposed for.
Um yeah, I haven't been anywhere, but I am currently in Port Pirie at Mum and Dad's on my way to Adelaide doing important things. Big thing, got my AGM on Wednesday for Livestock SA and a big dinner, 290 people. It's going to be super, super exciting. Then we've got the MLA updates on the Thursday, which is MLA's AGM and a lot of faffing around. And it's going to be great because it's going to be some really cool people there, get to catch up with a lot of people and see what MLA has been up to. Or as I like to say to the MLA staff and board, how you are spending my levy dollars and whether I agree with it or not.
Well, I reckon that should be a topic for next week, definitely, the MLA AGM. And I reckon we'd also love to hear about the SA livestock one.
Yeah, I'm not envisaging any sort of large dramatics. But yeah, I'll definitely give you all a recap on what I get up to.
So, as you guys would have heard last week, I was not on air. I was due to a household sickness. So, my family came down with rhinovirus as well as croup, which played up with my kids' asthma. So, we had a couple of very scary nights. My kids decided that they would go blue and they would stop breathing. So, very good to make sure that everyone is up on their first aid training. They've got their emergency plan spoken with their partner, and you all know you're on the same page. So got them all back and happy and healthy. A couple of doctor's visits. Make sure your cupboards are full of, your asthma puffers and asthma plans and everything like that as well. And yeah, just make sure when you're catching up with other people that you are letting them know, what kind of sickness you have and be mindful. I know that since, COVID has finished, that a lot of people have really relaxed down on when they're sick, still going and seeing people. But when you've got young kids or elderly people or pregnant women, it is really important to stay away if you are unwell. And it is really important to let them know if you have come down with something since seeing them. Because, my kids have asthma. So, anything respiratory triggers that and it can go downhill very quickly. It can be very scary. We are, as you guys know, not in town. And it does take, quite a bit of time to get into town and it's too long if someone's not breathing. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
fair.
it's common courtesy. If you're coughing and spluttering and putting your boogies everywhere, don't go out in public for Christ's sakes. There's nothing that requires you. In these modern times, you can stay in your own home for at least 24 hours without perishing, unless you're actually going to so sick you need an ambulance. In that case, call an ambulance. Don't just go spreading your stuff around, because you never know who you're going to encounter, who might be vulnerable, who might. Just because people don't look sick on the outside doesn't mean that they don't have a lung condition or a heart condition or anything like that. So, for the love of God, just stay home, wash your hands, and don't cough everywhere and don't be gross.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Apparently.
Mm.
So no, apart from that, just been working on across the farms as well. So been trucking out stock, destocking. It is getting as dry as a tinderbox here. So just keeping on top of everything, destocking, making sure our piping and Pumping gears are all serviced and ready to go as well, just in case we need to fill anything up.
Yep, it's starting to look a bit scary actually. We drove down from home down to south today. Our harvest has been finished in the mid-north where mum and dad are for I don't know how long. A lot of people didn't wait, they just cut it for hay. A lot of people didn't even cut what they grew. It's drying off really, really quickly. And that's not a surprise because it was really dry and they got enough rain to sort of sow, but not enough moisture, subsoil moisture to sort of bring those crops up to really be good and healthy. So unfortunately, rolled the dice. I actually was talking to someone today from Moree in New South Wales who got smashed by the hailstorm last week. I think it was last week. Yeah, knocked
Might have
three
been the week
quarters.
before.
Yeah, knocked three quarters of the value off their crop, and they're thinking about getting out of cropping and going back into livestock. So yeah, cropping's a gamble. I don't know how you guys do it, to be honest. Like, at least we've got irrigation. We don't know what we're doing, but at least we can turn the sprinkler on if all goes pear-shaped. Like,
Yeah, well, I think like we're mixed farming, so not all our biscuits or no, well, not all our eggs are in one basket, which I think helps. But I think it would definitely be a big gamble to just be a cropping plot. You'd have to
yeah,
have a lot of land to make sure that it, whether it got knocked back or not, that you still had enough to cover all your costs and your debt repayments and everything else.
because it's not cheap.
No.
But anyway, on that, what was the first topic again? I
Let me scroll up. Okay, so speed limits have been proposed to be reduced to 80 kilometers an hour on unsignposted roads. So this affects not the cities, not the major towns, but I'm assuming this is mostly dirt road, back roads, Western
yeah,
country.
yeah. So it's everyone, and this is a very interesting thing because the current state of play is unsignpost roads. You drive to the conditions.
Mhm.
Be very few unsealed roads where in Australia where you could do 80 k's an hour to start with because of this, the absolute state of the joint, like infrastructure's a nightmare. And,
One of my
and
pain points.
yep, this is one of those topics too. Like the opposition has grabbed this report that's come out and like, oh, Labor's going to do this and Labor's going to do that. And so when I was doing my research, I found out that this was first proposed back in 2018 and 2000, in between 2018 and 2020, when Barnaby Joyce was deputy, I almost said premier, prime minister, because it's a regular review that happens because a lot of people die on Australian roads, right? So they do this review to try and come up with ideas about how we can cut the road toll. And it was first floated back then. And now, of course, you're seeing the Nats and the Libs, the LNP, like going, oh, Labor doesn't understand rural areas, blah, blah, blah. But on top of that, this is more like political fuckery that we talk about all the time. It's not even a federal responsibility to set road speeds and rules. It's a state responsibility. So it's just grandstanding. It's just a lot of things. But I'm sure you've got some points too, Katja. So let's hear them.
Well, I didn't have as much time to sit down on
You've had
my,
no
my
time for
Starlink
it.
in my vehicle and research it. But what I couldn't find was whether, like, what they classified as an unsignposted road. Because I was like, is that roads that have open speed limits? Is that roads that, and if it is, like, I don't think the majority of accidents are happening on those roads because those roads are only where there are long, straight, low hazard area, like hazards, but then they are also not on roads where there are a huge population driving on them. So I was like, well, that's not going to really impact that many people. So I don't think they would pay for that to be put into place. And
Yeah,
then I was thinking, well, maybe it's just a language thing and it's been caught in a misinterpretation from people who don't understand rural areas. And maybe they're talking about unsealed roads that have limited signage
yeah,
because that would make more sense in well, it would be wider spread, but you're still not having a huge population driving on those roads. So if you're wanting to make a big impact by reducing speed, then you would be wanting to look at areas and highway stretches that have higher speed limits, higher traffic, higher people levels on it. Wouldn't that make more sense? Or hotspots where people are having accidents due to speed? Like, is it windy? Is it unsealed? Is there loose gravel that's come onto the road if it is sealed? Like, it just didn't make sense to be like, oh, let's do that for these areas that are unregulated and unsigned. The benefit I can't see outweighing the cost of changing all that infrastructure and signage.
Yeah, and that's, I don't think that there's not going to be any benefit. The only benefit is that if they do implement any of these measures, would be to say, oh, look, we've done this thing, it will save all these lives, and it hasn't cost us any money, because the only alternative is that they actually fix the shitty infrastructure that they have. So while I was in the car, I did a bit of research on who's responsible for what and who's meant to be paying for it, because this is a constant source of angst when it comes like, oh, well, that's a national highway, so that's a federal responsibility, and that's a council road. So it's, and this is part of the problem of why our networks are in such a mess. And this goes for all of our systems across. It doesn't matter if it's health or education or transport, everything is a bloody mess. So it's the federal government raises taxes, and that goes into consolidated revenue, and then they use that to pay for stuff, right? But it doesn't pay for all of the stuff. And so even though you might be paying like a federal fuel excise or something like that, all that fuel money doesn't then go back to the roads. It just goes back into a pot, and then it gets split up and gets spent elsewhere. And then the state collects money as well through licensing and registration primarily. And then that is supposed to be targeted to go back into the roads, because they raise that money that's meant to be like, that's your fee to drive on the roads. And then there's local governments who levy rates and then are meant to work on their own roads, but everyone knows local government has no money, so they put in for grants from the state and the federal government to fix the local roads. And we all know what's happening is there's not enough money to go around. It's being administered by 3 different tiers of government. They're all taking a little administration bit out of it, so not the maximum amount of money is actually being used, because it's really easy for governments to say, oh, no, that's not my responsibility, but here, have a little bit of money to fix it. And so they can seem like they're very helpful. But in reality, no one wants the responsibility of it, because no one wants to have to fully pay for it. And that's how we've ended up in the mess that we're in, with roads that are not fit to drive on in the majority of Australia.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just a mess. It's a mess. And no one wants to fix it, because no one wants to be the person who goes, I can fix the roads, but it's going to be all my responsibility, and I'm going to have to charge you a few more dollars in tax, because you'd never get re-elected, because that's human nature. We're like, oh, we already pay enough tax, just spend it better. But yeah.
I was talking to a civil engineer a couple of weeks back, and they were saying the types of projects that they like to work on are usually private projects over public projects, because with the private projects, they cost more because everyone puts the fees on and you have to go by the book, but you get the job done. And you usually get it once you get the approval takes some time, but once you get the approval, the job gets done much quicker. So they prefer to work on jobs like that. They were saying with the jobs, when it's with any of the councils or any of the government jobs, they might cut corners to make it, a little bit cheaper, but not safety corners, just some of the red tape. But the job itself will take longer, because you don't have control over approvals. So you might do one stage of the job and then it goes on hold. One stage of the job, then it goes on hold, and you got to wait for the next approval for it. And by the time the next approval comes down, the first lot of work you've done might need to be redone, especially if it's in layering of all the groundwork, and because it's been driven on or there's been weather
Mhm.
or something like that that's come up in the meantime between when they've finished it and when they've got the approval. I don't understand
Yeah.
why the approval doesn't come through before they finish that next stage, because then
And
they're then all of a sudden you've got potholes and all sorts of things coming back up because the foundational work they've already done that they don't have time and they don't have money to go back and fix is wrecked before they're doing the next level of the
yeah,
job.
I know we all like to say it's a bit of a joke, like council workers leaning on their shovels and that sort of thing. But if you've ever seen a state or federal government like construction project, it is the most haphazard, poorly organized shambles because the contractors know the checkbook never ends. Because once they start a project, they have to finish it. They can't just go, no, you fellas are no good. They're committed. So you can just sort of drag it out, and people are taking advantage. Like it's just so frustrating. But yeah. That's the state of the roads, and that is just a nonsense. All right. Next topic we've got is harvest complaints.
Yes. So a article was put up on the Stock Journal, and I think there was one in the Land as well. So people are complaining about harvesters at night. They're saying that the lights and the sounds are keeping them awake at night. Julian, what do you think?
Yeah, so this has actually come from the opposition here in South Australia. So Nicola Santafati is our opposition spokesperson for agriculture. She's really passionate about ag and she really wants to do the right thing. So what happened recently in South Australia? They re-looked at the Nuisance Act, which is like people doing stupid things and then causing a nuisance, and then you can get fined for it, right? Mining is 100% exempt from the Nuisance Act. It doesn't matter what they do. They are 100% exempt. You know who's not exempt? Agriculture. So you could be doing your normal agricultural business of farming, of just doing your own job that you've done for 50 years. And if someone has moved in next door to you and they object, they can go and lodge a complaint against you. And then you'll have to be investigated and all this other sorts of shenanigans. And if you're found to be acting unreasonably, you can be fined for it. So the Liberal Party in South Australia has said this isn't good enough. If you can exempt one primary production industry, which is mining, why don't you exempt all primary production industries, which is agriculture? And I think that's fair enough because no one is out there doing things in the middle of the night just to annoy the neighbours. It is literally, we're just doing our job. And it is so frustrating, especially when you've got the pressures between the urban sprawl, and they're buying these little lifestyle blocks and hobby blocks and that sort of thing in amongst productive farms. And then all of a sudden, it's like you move to a farming area and now you're complaining about farmers farming. Like you
That was
knew
100% my point.
you buy a house next to a pub and then complain when Friday and Saturday night are loud and busy. Like you knew where you were buying. Like it's bullshit. It's literal bullshit.
And I think with things like harvest, it's only once or twice a year, predominantly summer. But then if you're growing winter crops, as well, so it's twice a year for a couple of weeks. Like it's not always going on. You know it's coming. And if you
Yeah.
have moved to a rural area amongst farming blocks and you don't know that it's coming up, then I think that responsibility is on you to do
Yeah.
your research of the area before you move there.
Yeah. If you go on, you're looking at a house or a block or whatever, and you see big productive farms, right? Then you should have the common sense to go, oh, at some stage there's going to be a tractor in there. Like maybe ask a few questions. Google exists. Like when do tractors go, when do tractors operate a lot? When are farmers doing lots of farming? And you will know and you will understand. You can watch things on YouTube. You can go on a video game and play Farm Simulator and figure it out for your damn self. Don't it, don't buy into an agricultural area and then complain about people doing agriculture. It just makes no sense.
I know that real estate agents and property agents want to sell the land, But I think that also goes on them when they're talking about the block to be giving some of that information, at least, if they're worried about it, maybe not through the walkthrough, but once the house is settled and everything's
Mm.
been handed over, I think they should definitely be like, hey, I've noticed you've
Hey,
moved
hey,
out
here you go.
from the
Here's some
city.
information on farming.
Yeah. Or go and talk to your neighbors. Like if you've bought a block, go and talk to your neighbors. I just think it's so strange this day and age that a lot of people don't know their neighbors.
No, I can understand why some people don't want to know their neighbours, like because some of your neighbours, not all your neighbours are going to be nice people. And I know if I had like a hobby farm people move in next door to me, I'd probably step around them. Um, but it is, it also demonstrates a lack of respect for the community which you've decided to move into. Like
Yeah.
they've existed for many years before you came along. You can't just then the entitlement, the audacity to say, I've moved to this farming community, but I don't like farming now, so you fellas have to stop because I'm upset. It's like, how dare you? You know, it's like when I go to the city and I expect everyone, like, I can't say to people, shh, be quiet, stop driving, get out of the shop so I can shop in peace. That's the equivalent. But I'm not going to do that because I'm not an entitled shithead.
I do love the Australian humor. I do love that when something like this goes up, there are usually someone on Instagram or on Facebook Reels that end up taking the absolute piss out of it. And I know a lot of people don't like that I've just used that expression. Take the mickey out of it. So there have been so many people being like, "Oh, I didn't hear that harvester work. I didn't hear my harvester working at 3 a.m., while I
Mm,
was trying to get the crop off with the right conditions to try and make an income to feed my family and exist for another year." Um, because I thought the music was pretty loud. I'm surprised they're not having a go at the music I was playing.
yeah, it's but it's gonna, and this is why, like, I'm not usually a big fan of government overreach and overregulation. But if you're going to exempt one industry, you have to exempt the others,
Hmm.
right? So because we're pre-existing, people are buying our land to build houses on. People aren't buying mining land to build houses on. So we have to be able to farm, and that is the government's responsibility. We have to be able to continue to do our job.
I
Um,
had a really interesting conversation about America and where people as a whole value the food system and the food. So it was breaking it down per income per house, predominantly from sort of particularly looking at middle class and the percentages of how much the middle class spend across America, and other countries for their income. Do they spend, I think it was around, don't quote me on these numbers, but I think it was around 19% of their income on food. But then as you go down into other third world countries, they're spending over 60% of their income on food, and they value food and they value food production. And I'm wondering where Australia sits within that, because
mm,
I think we have a bit of a chip on our shoulder in that I bet that not much of our income is spent on food for most people.
yeah,
And that is where a lot of the policy is coming from, that place of privilege that we usually talk about on the podcast, because they're not spending a majority of their money on food, feeding themselves, feeding their family, and they're making decisions that's going to make that harder for farmers to produce so that we are a self-sufficient country that can feed itself without reliance on import export. But also, like, what does that do with the lower
yeah,
classes, that this is a real thing for them, and
mm,
that value really has to be reflected in our policy making, and it's not, and it's going to make it much harder for everyone, and it is going to take up much more of that percentage of wage.
And whilst ever people who've never been hungry and have never struggled are the ones responsible for setting and implementing policy. Policy will never change.
Mm.
We need to sort of flip our society around. So we need to put some of the most vulnerable and some of the most exposed to risk people, I think, in charge of making these policy decisions, because like farmers are a really good example. Like, you know, if every year you run the risk of losing everything you've got, you're going to take a very different approach to regulations and those sorts of things. And if you've never had to struggle or work, or everything's just sort of been easy,
Mm.
you're going to have a very different view to people who've always had to work hard and have never been paid high paying jobs and all those sorts of things. And I think that's where, like, we talk about the urban rural divide, but I think there's a bigger divide between the people of Australia and the political class. Like,
Mm.
and there's also, like, there's all these, they say, oh, we'll get involved in changing it. Okay, so if you can't afford to put food on your table, how are you going to run for parliament?
Yeah.
You've got bigger things to worry about. You've got to try and clothe, feed, and house and educate your kids or yourself. You can't be, running the country, and we're outsourcing our well-being to people who don't give a shit about us, is what it boils down to. And that's not great, to be honest.
No. No. And I know we've gone a little bit off topic, but I was talking to a few people who had been to recent health conferences for Australia and talking about how, stress in rural areas is increasing,
Mm,
but the plan to attack that is not getting any more funding, or the programs that's available to train people in helping in those communities is very basic and is under-resourced and not enough. So
mm,
I don't really know what the solution is, but I think we're heading in a direction which is going to have long-term implications and impact. And it's really interesting because you talk to a certain group of people and they say, oh, what Australia needs is a depression. I really hope that we don't have to get into that situation where everyone as a mass is going through it
mm.
before policy changes and before the value of what is feeding us and keeping
Yeah,
us alive changes.
yeah. And it is such a thing, like, and this is the thing, because we're a very food, like, wealthy nation, right? We export a lot. So if we can barely feed ourselves, there's a very large percentage of the global population that is going to go hungry, because what we're really good at producing is staple crops, things that poor people eat,
Yeah.
grains, pulses, basic proteins. That is what we excel at. And so if we're not doing our job properly, if we're just feeding Australia, if we're not feeding the world, like, think about what that's going to do on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I don't, I disagree with that fundamentally. Like, we can't be having people go hungry when we're so good at what we do. Just let us do our job and leave us alone.
Yeah.
That's all we want. Jesus Christ.
On
Oh,
that note, we might head into question and answer. And I know that this question was handled by yourself and Cynthia last week, but I thought I had a good giggle when when I was uploading it, because I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't interpret this question the same as you both did. So this is where I'll put my opinion in.
yeah,
So the question was about social media.
yep.
So we had a new listener write in. They were going through our socials and our backlog of episodes, and they noticed that we share a lot more articles on our Facebook page than what we cover on the show, and whether or not that is where they should be commenting and having discussions. So I did think that was very funny, because if you guys haven't listened to last episode, go back and have a listen. Cynthia and Jill discussed this in length. Um, but what I
But we
thought,
didn't answer the question.
I don't know.
Whoops.
A little bit. So you went down the rabbit hole of people having big opinions online,
Yep.
and that there's people can't just have two opinions and it be like, oh, you think that, that's fine. I think this, we don't both have to be right. We don't both have to be wrong kind of thing. Like nobody has that. They've all got that keyboard warrior kind of thing, like I am right and this is my experience
Mm.
and this is my opinion. So you went down that rabbit hole. But I think what they were asking was if we do share additional information on an article we're not covering on the podcast, do they want to let us know that we should cover that if they find it interesting? Yes. If there is something that we've shared on our socials that we haven't done, spoken about in length, and you want to know our opinion and you want to know how that contributes to closing the urban rural divide, let us know in the comments. If we haven't covered it and it's been a little while and you still want to know, go back and comment on it, because Jill and I are both doing lots of things. We have lots of balls in the air and we might just miss it for that week when we're putting the
Yep.
show together. Um, but
And you can also message us. I do check the DMs, and we've got an email address. You can find Karcher anywhere. You can reach her at the Rural Mum email address. Just Google her. She's out there.
Mhm.
Like, we're very friendly. We'll
We
ask,
are.
we'll talk about just about anything.
Yeah.
I don't think we've struck anything we haven't talked about yet, have we? That we've received.
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered everything so far that's come through.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any topics so far that we've gone, oh, I don't know if I'll talk about that. So we are very open, we are very honest, we are happy to cover whatever is interested with you guys on the podcast. So keep sending those through. We do share a lot of extra information on our Facebook page. Most of them are from agricultural groups, particularly
Hmm.
when they are doing events or policy changes or some really interesting topics. A lot of it is like a for your information in bridge
Yeah.
urban rural divide, things that you might be interested that's coming up. So do check out the Facebook page. And if you are not one for social media and you want to see everything collated together, we have a newsletter list. It goes out once a month. So we're not always in your inbox, but once a month we bring everything together from the Ultimate Farm Wife and Absolutely Fabulous and anything we're doing with the Harvest Her Power Conference. It's on that one newsletter that goes out once a month. That link is always in the show notes. So jump on that newsletter list as well.
Yep. And that's a really good way to stay in touch. And that's it. The social media is a mix between us trying to like entertain you and inform you and, sharing things that we support that we think is a really good idea. Like we share a lot of Shanna Wan's stuff
Yeah.
because she's doing marvelous stuff, really sharing. I'm leaning into sharing all the what's it called? I can't even think. It's something dignity. It's for collecting ladies' products and putting them in a bag, and then you drop them off
Oh,
at Bunnings.
share the dignity.
Yeah. So they're running their big pre-Christmas campaign. So if you want to get behind that, buy a heap of ladies' products on their websites, a list of suitable things to include, put them in a bag or a backpack or something, something that's nice and that you would like to receive. Don't give other people trash because that's
We've
terrible.
spoken about that on the podcast before too.
Yeah, don't do that. That's just a terrible thing to do. If you wouldn't like to receive it, and I'm not talking about taste because everyone's tastes are different. If you wouldn't like to receive that quality thing, don't give it to someone else. I'm not a big fan of like, I don't know. I really like sparkly things. Other people do not. I would really like to receive a sparkly backpack. Other people would not. So yeah, just because it's not to your taste, that's fine. But if it's like something that's been kicking around the back seat of your car for 3 years and has your kid's moldy old sandwich in it, don't give them that. That's terrible. That's a terrible thing to do. So yeah, check the website, share the dignity, drop it off. I think there's Bunnings. I think some supermarkets are doing it, all those sorts of things, and get behind that because it's coming up to their Christmas, like pre-Christmas thing. And that's a really good way to support other women who might be struggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, third topic. So the bull bar band, the bull bar discussion is back in the media. I think they recycle it every couple of years. They are now campaigning at the moment as one of their social media things, are you protecting people or are you, against it? Like, I don't know if I described that very well, but basically they're saying if you do not ban bull bars, then you are actively choosing to hurt and maim people. And that is so far from the truth, and that is so far from reality for a lot of people who are living rural and remote. Bull bars are an absolute necessity for their safety and for the safety of others because they are there for native wildlife, livestock, whatever it is, when we are driving on our roads, we have wild animals, pigs, goats, camels, all sorts of things that we need to protect ourselves and the people in our vehicle from. And the way that the bull bars are made, set up, angled is all for that. I
Yeah.
understand that people may have an issue with it in major cities, capital cities, that sort of place, where there is transport options and where wildlife is less
You're
threat.
less likely to encounter a camel standing in the middle of the road or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So I did a bit of research on old mate Harold, who's the one behind this thing, because it came out, it was part of the same study about reducing the speed rates on roads. So it's how can we save people's lives on the roads is the whole purpose of this review, and they do it very often. So Harold lives in Mossman in Sydney, and if you know anything about geography or about real estate, you'll understand why Harold is anti-bull bar, because he lives in a suburb that has some of the highest house prices in Australia. So Harold is definitely speaking from a place of privilege when he says he would like to have bull bars banned. So don't worry too much about Harold. When he was questioned in the Senate inquiry just recently about this report, he could not provide any more recent data than an EU study from 2006. So that was nearly 20 years ago. So I went and did a bit of a look around to see if there's been any scholarly articles or research or anything done. And again, it is all cut off around that 2006 mark. There's been some studies into the design of bull bars and whether they are going to, because the whole thing is what they don't want your bull bar to do is to, if you do accidentally contact a pedestrian, they don't want to knock the pedestrian in underneath your vehicle and then you run over them, because that's going to be really, really bad. They sort of want to angle it back so that if you do hit a pedestrian, they come up onto your bonnet, which is also bad, but probably not quite as fatal. Depends, there's so many different, like depends on how fast you're going and all those sorts of things. So there's been those sorts of studies done. So but the thing is that I didn't, in the 12 months to July 2025, 205 people have been killed by cars, pedestrian. Like that is insane. What are these people, like what are these drivers doing? And then what are these people doing?
In Australia,
Yeah. What are you doing on the road? Get off
where are
the
the
road.
hotspots? I don't think that would be rural and remote.
No, I don't. I really don't think that's rural. Like when you look at the majority of bull bars that live in rural, remote areas, that's not where people have been run over. Although I will say in my neck of the woods, running over people is a very popular way to solve disputes amongst just domestic violence in particular in Alice Springs. Running over each other seems to be a great idea for some people. So I probably in my area, I probably do have a higher incidence of road related deaths, pedestrian v car, than any other sort of remote areas in Australia. But so I thought I'll dig a bit deeper into this data. So if so many people are dying, maybe bull bars are the problem. There's no data collected whether to say that those fatalities, like whether there's no percentage of those fatalities that are resultant of a bull bar. It's just like, oh well, this many people been killed by being hit by a car. But no, like, okay, and then 150 of those 200 were smashed to smithereens by a bull bar. That data's not collected. So to say, oh, bull bars are out here killing people, is look, we've seen what happens when a bull bar contacts a large thing. It's not
Yep.
great. And if you do it at speed, it's really not great. But I think the circumstances where you are at speed and connect with a pedestrian. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but it'd be very, very slim. And for those of you who don't know, I used to be an ambulance officer, and I've seen what happens when a car with a bull bar strikes a large animal, a horse or a cow, or those sorts of things. And when when a vehicle without a bull bar strikes a similar sized animal,
Yep.
and I can tell you that if you've got a bull bar, your chance of survival is much, much higher than if without, because I've never.
Unless it's tilted up
Mm,
for that
yes,
animal to land on your bonnet and through your windscreen, then
windscreen.
what is the point of having the bull bar?
Yeah. And that is a thing. Like, so when you hit a horse or a camel, they have long legs and they will enter your vehicle through the windscreen. Everyone's cooked.
Yep.
But if you get a goat or a kangaroo or a pig, they're going to go underneath your car. Bullocks usually just stop you dead. But we need them. It is not it. I don't want a bull bar because it's cool. Quite frankly, bull bars are a massive pain in the ass when you're trying to park, when you're trying to do anything to the motor vehicle.
They
We
are
need
expensive.
Oh, they play havoc with your suspension. If
Mhm.
you don't boost up your front suspension, especially on rough dirt roads, you will bust out your shockies all the time. That it is just a pain in the ass, but we need them. They are as essential to us as seatbelts.
Yep.
Bull bars save as many lives as seatbelts. And I've read some studies, and well, not studies precisely, but because now they're trying to say, oh, well, in a modern car, bull bars affect the crumple zones and those sorts of things. So you might even be safer if you hit something large without a bull bar. No, that's not true. So they're just trying to like kid people into not having bull bars. But if you've got a bull bar and side rails and it really reinforces that crumple zone and those sorts of things, then you're going to be much safer. And I think what a lot of people also forget is that we don't have bull bars. Like, yes, bull bars will save our life, but a bull bar will save our vehicle. So we're not stuck in the middle of nowhere with an inoperable motor vehicle. We can still make our way home. Our car is still drivable and recoverable. It's to save the people inside, and it's to save that motor vehicle from complete destruction. Because the way modern cars are designed, they are designed to have crumple zones and those sorts of things. And your car will literally explode around you,
Yep.
and you'll be stuck there forever if you survive. So yeah, it's just leave us alone. We just want to live and do our jobs. And we don't want to have to be constantly justifying our existence or fighting for things that we need to survive. Please just leave us alone. Just, Harold, just go back to Mossman in your very expensive home and walk around in your very safe footpaths and leave us alone, please. Yeah.
I
Banning
think
every.
sometimes they forget as well, like they're campaigning for something that's not necessary for their area. If it's
Mm,
not necessary for your area and you don't have the knowledge in it, that doesn't mean that it's not a necessity for others. It doesn't mean that others don't have the knowledge around why they need that. And I think it's also when they're talking about, well, okay, let's ban it from our area. Well, people have got to travel through and they've got to drive through areas where they need the bull bar, or it might be part of, what they need for their business coming from their farm, inputting the food into the city. And so it's not viable for them to have
no.
two vehicles and be like, oh, it's okay, say for New South Wales, leave your vehicles and your trucks at the mountains,
Mm,
unpack everything onto the train or hire a vehicle in the mountains and then continue on your way. That's just not viable in any economy, in any
no.
business plan. And if that's what you want us to do, Harold, it's Harold, isn't it?
It's Harold.
Harold,
Of
if
course,
that's what you
Harold.
want us to do, then you need to come up with a plan on how you are going to subsidize businesses, families, um, whatever other subsection that's going to impact into traveling into or through your area, because that's playing with
Yeah.
economy, that's playing with people's businesses and people's lives, and it's not on.
Harold's really worried about pedestrian, like car strikes, cars v pedestrians in cities with bull bars. He could come and spend a few weeks in outback South Australia with the Flying Doctor and do some car v um, cows and those sorts of things and without bull bars and see how people sort of feel about that. It's a nonsense. Like, stop trying to police other people's lives. It is not hurting you. It is not causing grave amounts of danger and harm to a very, very large population of people. It's not asbestos. It's like it's not. We're not out like it's not lead poisoning. It's not out here affecting everybody. It is a very, 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 very small cohort of people. And honestly, I do drive around town in Adelaide and that a little bit. I do wonder about pedestrians as well. Like, obviously, pedestrians always have right of way. There's no excuse to run them over or anything like that. But if you're walking around town, looking at your phone with your headphones in, and you step out in front of a car and you get hit, then, yeah, the person driving the car should put the brakes on. But also, you need to be aware of your surroundings as well. Like, everyone has a responsibility to keep themselves safe. So yeah, I worry about pedestrians and people sleeping on roads. That's a pretty common thing up in the top end.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you can't really. They're dark. Cars got no headlights sometimes. It's nighttime. It's a recipe for disaster. So there's lots of different things that we could do that don't involve banning bull bars to save people's lives on the roads. Yeah. Oh, what else did we have? Is that it? Or is there one more?
I think we had one more.
Oh, the transmission company demanding access. Yeah, that was an interesting one, actually.
Read this one.
So yeah, Victoria, Victoria's at the front of this farmer v transmission line sort of fight. Victorian government's pushing it very hard, obviously. I would equate the Victorian government's sort of empowerment of transmission line companies the same as South Australians' empowerment of mining companies. Like, every state sort of like picked its horse it's going to back to make special rules and stuff for. For us, it's mining. For Victoria, it's renewable energy and power generation and transmission. So I think it's VNI. They're trying to build a big interconnector, and it's just like, we've spoken about this before. There's road verges. There's Crown land. You don't need to build shit through the middle of people's farms. The roads already exist. They go in a straight line. Build it along the side of the road. You might have to cut across a paddock here, there, or somewhere. But like, just drawing a straight line across 100 different farms is bullshit, just to save you some money. Build it down the side of the road. Anyway, they're trying to do the surveys and those sorts of things, and the farmers, because what they're doing, they're being very rude. They're just slapping up the notice of entry thing on people's gates and saying, we will be here between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. and we expect access. So the farmers are getting those and they're reading them and they're circulating it, and they're making people barricades at gates.
Yep.
And so 80 farmers, I think, turned up to one incident. And then, of course, old mate from the power company went away, and then he came back with the police. And the police have no powers here. The only thing the police can do is, if things start to kick off, they can intercede, but they can't say, you farmers have to get out of the way and let this guy on, because there's a bit of a legislation thing happening at the moment. Under the old legislation, you weren't allowed to force your way onto people's lands. However, under the new legislation, which some people believe has technically not been enacted yet, you are allowed to. So they're like going, what's legal, what's not legal? And I know, and this is going to be so hard for the people, like the power line people on the ground. They're not making, they're just trying to do a job.
Yeah. They're being told to do it, and they're going to go and try and do their job. And I think that's why a lot of these protests and these human barricades have been peaceful, because they know that they can temporarily block access.
Yeah. Sorry, mate, you can't come in. And old mate, all he can do is go, I'm meant to come in there, and they can say, no, sorry, you're not coming in. Because people are like, we're getting much better. Farmers are getting much better. We are very angry, and I understand them completely, but we're not taking that out on the people who turn up to the gate, because they're not the executives. They're not the politicians. They're just a person who's got their own bills to pay and their own families to raise and their own job to do. And the farmers are just like, okay, you're not coming in here today. And so he has to go back and he has to get his manager, and his manager then has to go and get the police. Then he has to go and keep doing that until you end up with the CEO down there. Like, honestly, it's the best way. And every time something like this happens, it ends up in the news, and it's going to raise awareness of the issues. And this is what I hate, because there's an element out there that goes, oh, farmers are just anti-renewables and they're so selfish. They should just sacrifice a piece of their land for the greater good because you get paid for it and this and that and everything else. And yeah, you get paid for it. Is it worth it though? I don't know. If you're not given a choice, like, it's all well and good to say, oh, you can be paid to do this. Okay, but if you're forced to do it, then I don't think there is any amount of money, because you've already said no. And they go, okay, so we'll use the law to make you do it. Oh, and here's a little bit of money to make you feel better. You've already said no, so that money's not going to help. And it all comes back to the entitlement to other people's land that they're already using and doing a productive thing with. The power transmission line company needs to go and either buy all those farms at market value and make their own arrangements, or find another spot for their goddamn power line to go. But the government just goes, oh, no, we'll let you build over other people's land. No problem. We'll make it the law. And that's bullshit.
It is. In most states, there is so many meters per side of the road that is owned by the government and the state. Use that.
Yeah.
Yes, it will cost them more. Yes, there's no direct line, but that is exactly what that is for.
And even if you were to go to a farmer and go, okay, mate, so we need to build this power line, so we're going to buy your front strip off you. We're going to take 10 meters, deep off the front of your paddock for whatever, how long it is. And we'll build you a new fence, and we'll pay your market rate for the land. You would get a much better result doing that than going, we're going to cut straight across your paddock. Those big long runs you had when you're trying to do your cropping don't exist anymore. Or like, it's just this, oh, okay, so it's going to cost someone a little bit more, so we'll just force other people into it. Like, it's a commercial prospect for these power line people, right? They wouldn't be doing it if they weren't going to make money. So why is the government bending over backwards to help them make more money? Because they're saying, oh, it's going to bring power prices down. Bullshit. It's not going to bring
temporarily.
But and this is the thing, because a private enterprise owns the infrastructure, the government can't then turn around and say to that private enterprise, oh, well, you promised me you'd bring your power prices down. They went, nah, we did some calculations, and to make money, we have to charge this. And the government can just go, okay, because they don't own it.
I have 2 points. The first point is it happened with solar panels when they said, we want you guys to put solar panels in and we will pay you for the power you put into the grid. So it started at a really good price. And then after a couple of years, they dropped it to basically next to nothing. And then now they're saying if you're putting power into the lines, you will now be charged for it, which is a complete flip. And most people haven't even paid off the installment of their solar panels, and now they're having to look at paying even more money into investing in batteries, so they're not going to get charged for putting power back into the system. So I don't see how this would be any different. The second thing is, if they are paying, yes, they might pay for the change in infrastructure, like the change of fences and the payment of that land, but that's a one-off payment. What about every year after that, where you now have a reduction of land or reduction of productivity stretches, if it is going straight through someone's place? Why are you not paying for the biosecurity risk and management that now needs to come with it? Because it's not just to install the lines. You've then got people coming and going all the time on your farm, And that also means, not only biosecurity, but it also means that usually the more access points we have to a farm, the more infrastructure that goes through farmland, it will bring more people onto that place, whether that is hunters, unauthorized hunters, whether that's drifters, whether that's people, just finding roads on Google Maps and going and walking their dogs on them. Like I have heard that happen so many times to lots of other people where they're just like, oh my gosh, I had this person walking in the back paddock and they were
Yeah,
like, oh, I totally didn't realize that this was private land because it's on Google Maps. Well, just
yeah,
because it's on Google Maps doesn't mean you can bring your dogs on it. Again, biosecurity. What about if they're running a baiting program? You bring your
yeah,
dog on, your dog gets a bait, then you want to sue the person whose land that is? Well, you shouldn't have been on it to start with.
yeah. Oh, what about if your dog slips off the leash and starts killing people's sheep? Like, Jesus Christ.
Mm.
Like,
They leave
if
a
it does,
gate open, all of a sudden your stock's on the road, and then it's causing incidents and accidents that's going to hurt someone or kill your stock, and they don't care because it's not their stock, and they're going to blame the farmer.
yeah, no, it's just the audacity and again the entitlement of people who don't have to live with these decisions, who only care about getting re-elected. They don't care about the lives of the people involved. They only care about themselves. And that is, again, it's that big distance between the people of Australia and the people, the political class who are making all the decisions for everyone. It's just nonsense. But yeah, so good on you farmers for a nice peaceful protest, for a nice peaceful action there. We love that. We love to see that. Keep it up. Um, we support anyone's right to their own farm to
Yeah,
do what they want with it. They, you know, make the big corporations with lots of money do the thing. Don't make the poor individual here just trying to make a living do the thing.
yeah.
Government, are
Guys,
you
if you
listening?
have a petition, if you are looking for support, send it our way. We will circulate it on our socials because we are standing here with you. We understand completely where you're at and why you're doing it. So we want to help. So if there's a petition, if there's something that you're working on in the background, send it our way.
Yep, most definitely.
And as always, guys, we love hearing from you. So, as Gillian said earlier in the episode, we are on socials. Send us a DM, comment on any of the articles and posts that we pop up, or there's the email address, which is always in the show notes. We look forward to hearing from all of you. What's interesting in your world? What do you want us to cover on the podcast? And if you have any questions, doesn't matter what it is, send it our way. We did get a question about stocking stuffers and Christmas stuff, so we might even add that into next episode. So we have got your questions if we haven't answered it in today's episode, and we'll work on that in the future because some of them were really great topic ideas.
So yeah, we record every Monday. So if you get us the ideas, like if you give us an idea Tuesday, that gives us time to get it into the show for the next time. So if you give us something on Monday or Sunday, even because usually Katja sets the topics because I'm the talent, I just arrive. Usually the topics are set over the weekend and then we record Monday. So if you get them to us early in the week, you'll be able to hear them usually on that episode coming out. So yeah. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, everybody. Have until next time. Have a great week. Bye.